Hey everybody, it's Ashley. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing my top 10 Stephen King picks. Now, as of right now, I have not completed all of Stephen King's work. I'm making my way through them pretty steadily. I hope to finish them all by the end of the year, and at that time I will of course update this list, but this is where I'm sitting as of right now. It's a starting point for anybody that wants to delve into his books but doesn't really know where to start. And let's just go ahead and get started. In the number 10 spot is a book that isn't very popular amongst fans. There tends to be a lot of mixed reviews on this one, but it is one of my personal favorites. I read it 2 times back to back, and that is The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. Now, this is very, very short compared to what he ordinarily writes. And this is the story of a 9-year-old girl named Trish who gets lost in the woods. She had gone hiking with her family, and her mother and her brother were fighting nonstop. She kind of felt like a third wheel. Nobody was really paying attention to her, and she ended up needing to use the bathroom. So rather than announce that she needs to go, she decides to venture off the trail and give herself a little bit of a break from the fighting, but she can't find her way back. And I believe it was 3 or 4 days that she was in these woods having to survive, encountering animals, encountering, needing to eat, and basically all these survival instincts, except it's a 9-year-old child. And as a coping mechanism, she continues to see her favorite baseball player, which is Tom Gordon, and it helps push her through and give her the motivation she needs to keep going despite getting sick, despite being hunted by something in the woods. And it's very sad and gripping. It's not his usual type of work. It's scary, more so in the sense that this is something that could easily happen and probably has happened to somebody at some point. You can't help but feel for this little girl. He writes her character so well. She's incredibly smart, incredibly determined, and she is properly scared. She realizes what kind of situation that she's in, but she knows that she has to get going or she's never going to get help. And she just keeps pushing through no matter how she feels. She keeps thinking about documentaries that she's seen with her mother, things that she's learned in school, stuff like that to try to help her survive out there, know what she can eat and what she can't eat that's growing. And it's a really engaging story because she does a lot of growing up while she's out there. And I urge you, pick this book up. It'll have you crying, I promise. It's really something special. In the number 9 spot, I have Pet Sematary. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Ashley, what Pet Sematary? Why isn't that higher up on the list? This is a very, very good book. Don't get me wrong. I love Pet Sematary. But there are so many others that he's done that I felt more invested in. Pet Sematary is the story of a doctor and his family moving to this small Maine town on a busy highway. And the highway is known for having all of these trucks go through at incredibly dangerous speeds. And a lot of pets get killed on this road every year. And their neighbor, Judd, tells them about a cemetery for pets that is actually on their property. And when their own cat gets killed, the doctor decides to bury this cat in the pet cemetery. But his neighbor, Judd, has developed a bit of a fondness for Lewis's daughter, and he decides to take Lewis further out into the cemetery to bury the cat. And what he does not tell Lewis is that in this particular section, anything that is buried will return, but it will return not right, not the same. And that is precisely what happens with this cat. He didn't want to break the little girl's heart, so he's just like, well, we'll bring our cat back. But the cat is demented, it's not the same, and as more tragedy begins to hit the family, Lewis wants to use the cemetery for other purposes with disastrous results. It is a very interesting story. I do love it, but I did feel this one was a little bit out there to be further down on my list. But I do think it's one of the best things that he has ever written, and Stephen King himself has stated that he almost did not publish this book because he thought that it was too terrifying. It is a very, very creepy, scary story. It's classic horror King, but it's not one that I'd say that's in my top 5, and I'll go more into details in that the further into the list that we get. But Pet Sematary is a very good book, and I strongly urge you to pick it up if you haven't already. The movie, the recent movie that just came out, does not touch this book. If you did not like the movie and you haven't read the book, give this one a chance, because it does beat the movie by a very, very wide margin. The next book on my list, in the number 8 spot, is another one that tends to get mixed reviews. It's not very popular among most constant readers, but I like this one, and I will go ahead and tell you why. That is Geralds Game. Now, Geralds Game is more of a psychological thriller, and I've always loved those types of books. I love when King does them because he's so good at narration and character development and all of those things that really make a psychological thriller tick. This is the story of a couple, a married couple, that are trying to bring some spice back into their marriage, and they go out to this cabin in the woods that's not quite, it's an off season. The area is not occupied, there's nobody else around, and they decide they want to try for a little bit of kinky play. And when the wife is handcuffed to the bed, the husband drops dead of a heart attack. And the story is her fight for survival, trying to keep from going crazy, trying to keep herself alive until somebody in their life realizes that they are gone and can help her. It really shows the psychological aspects and the physical aspects of what will happen to you in that situation. I mean, of course, her body is suffering. She's handcuffed to this bed. She doesn't have food, and nobody knows where she is. So she could be out there potentially for days before anybody can help her. And your mind is going to break down in that situation as well. I like how realistic this is. I like the way that you really get into the main character's mind and feel what she must be feeling, the terror of the situation, of knowing that her husband is gone and not being able to properly grieve because she has to get herself out of the situation that she is in. I find this an incredibly underrated book, and it's actually one of the better adaptations. It's a Netflix adaptation. Check it out if you haven't already seen it. But this is amazing, guys. Really, really give this a shot. In the number 7 spot is a very popular King book, and I actually do not have it with me, so I will insert a picture somewhere on the screen. But that is It. It is an incredibly masterpiece woven story. It is absolutely brilliance on a page. And it is the story of a group of friends that had been known as the Losers Club. And we go back and forth between two timelines, when they are children and when they are adults. And seeing the way that the stories interweave is very expertly done. I love the way that he does that part of the story. And it turns out that when these 7 children were 11, 12 years old, they were targeted by a demon that would take the form of their greatest fear, whatever it was, and terrorize them. And there was a string of child abductions and child murders going on in this town at the time. And the adults, they don't see what these kids see. They don't experience what the kids experience. They seem completely oblivious to everything. And this band of friends decides to take the creature out and stop it. And then years later in the future, it's back. The child abductions have started again. And they had made a pact that if it ever happened again, that they would all come back to make sure that the creature was stopped for good. It's an incredible story of friendship and bonding, facing your fears. There's so many metaphors in this story for life that really, really shine through. No movie could ever do this justice. It's just an incredible story. Yes, it is very out there, and it's not realistic in many, many, many parts, but it is a big metaphor for life itself, and that makes it worth the read. It's a long book, but once you get invested in the characters and in the story, you will not be able to stop turning the page. I insist. Pick up It and read it, and you will be inspired to face your fears and to always hold on to the strong bonds in your life, because you never know when they're going to be gone. In the number 6 spot, I have another psychological thriller, and that is Misery. This, until very, very recently, was in my top 5, actually. And this is a story of a man named Paul Sheldon, who is a writer, and he goes missing after leaving a resort. He's in a car crash in a blizzard, and this woman stops, pulls him out, and helps him. Her name is Annie Wilkes, and she's a nurse. She takes him to her home, nurses him back to health, and tells him that once the storm passes, that she will get him help. But what he doesn't know is she is absolutely obsessed with him and his writing, and when she reads the latest installment in her favorite series that he has written, she is livid that he has killed off her favorite character and decides to hold him hostage until he writes a sequel that brings her back. It is an incredible story of obsession and what celebrities go through with their fans all the time. The terror in this, the small setting, I love all of it. I love the way it plays with your mind. She's the most helpful person in the world on one point. And then the drop of a hat, she's crazy, psychotic. You sure could be a killer if she doesn't get her way. This will always be classic King. And if you have not read Misery yet, you are missing out. It's incredible. Pick it up. And if you actually would like a full review of this, be sure to let me know in the comments down below, because I will be very happy to oblige with that. And here we are, down to the top 5. In the number 5 spot, I talked about this a little bit in my mid-year book freakout tag, I believe it was, and that is The Long Walk. Stephen King originally wrote this under his pseudonym Richard Bachman, and this is a story of 99 boys who go on this walk, which is basically a walk to the death. And the way it works, it's kind of similar to the Hunger Games, except this came way before that, in that these kids are competing against each other for other people's entertainment until there's only one person standing. The only difference is they don't kill each other. They have to keep up a pace of at least 3 miles per hour while they are walking, and if they drop below that, they are allowed 3 warnings. After the 3rd warning, if they drop below again, they get shot and they're dead. That's not the only thing that can kill them, though. They can be killed from dehydration, hunger. They are given supplies daily, but it's a very, very small amount. And some of them just can't handle it mentally. So people start to go crazy. And you can't help but feel for these kids and what they're going through the whole way through the story. It's extremely, extremely sad. And you know that the main character that you're following is most likely going to win, or at least be in the final group. But you feel for all these side characters that you meet along the way. And as time goes on and more horrific things start to happen, their bodies start to go, their minds start to go, you feel every bit of it yourself. It's so engaging despite being short. And it makes you wonder in the end, is this really worth it for somebody's sick, twisted entertainment? And that's basically what it was. People would sit on the sidelines and watch, root for their favorites. And it's really, really sad that these boys, they volunteered for this. This is different from the Hunger Games in that aspect. The kids volunteer, but it's more because of that naive teenage belief that it can never happen to you, that you're untouchable. So everybody goes into it thinking that they can win, even when they don't have the reserve to really go for it. It's very, very sad. And if it doesn't have you crying, something's wrong with you, I swear. This is probably one of the best works in dystopian, because it is dystopian, it's a dystopian world, that I have ever read and probably ever will read. Give this one a shot. You will not be disappointed, I promise. Okay, and in the number 4 spot, I have a story called Needful Things. Now, this is one of the Castle Rock stories, which is one of several that Stephen King writes about this little town called Castle Rock, Maine. And this takes place when an antique store is opened called Needful Things. And it is run by a man named Leland Gaunt, who can give a person anything that they want, anything that you can imagine, for a steal of a price. But in exchange, he wants you to do something nasty to somebody else. And sometimes it starts off as harmless pranks, but it will eventually spiral into some really horrible things that basically turns the entire town against one another. It's very, very amazing for the characterization in it and the detail. I can't even begin to describe how very descriptive this is. It's absolutely amazing. It does get a little bit of a bad rap for the ending, and I'm not going to say anything about that in this list because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I can kind of see why people are irritated with the story because of that. But the rest of the book is pure gold. I read this in probably a day and a half, 2 days maybe, and it's a pretty big book. But I loved the concept. I've never read anything like that before, and it really is something amazing to think about, that you can get your heart's desire, but at what cost? That's really something absolutely incredible. Read Needful Things. You will love it. Okay, the next book, number 3, is a sequel. I'm usually not big on sequels, I'll be 100% honest about that. But this one blew me away. Dr. Sleep. I cannot say enough good things about Dr. Sleep. This is the sequel to The Shining, and this follows the main character, Danny, when he is all grown up and dealing with the things that happened to him as a child in The Shining, how he copes with it, how he handles it mentally, the way that he deals with his gift in general, and comes out of a bit of a funk in order to help a little girl that he has a bit of a psychic bond with, that has the same gift as him and is possibly even someone who shines even harder than he did, in his determination to make sure that the same things don't happen to her. It's a really incredible story. It's a very worthy sequel. It expands on the original story. You learn more background, but it's also all its own. If you'd never read The Shining, you could easily read this and be none the wiser, because enough is told about The Shining in this book that you get the gist of what happened without having to read the whole thing, even though I recommend that you do. But it's an amazing sequel. I think it's the best sequel that I've ever read. And while we're at it, can we just talk about this cover? I've been in love with this cover for years. I love the smoke, and for you die-hard fans, you will love the back. I don't know if you can see that. It's red rum. And if you've read The Shining, you know what red rum is. But I love Dr. Sleep. It's so amazing. And I have to reread this very, very soon because the movie is coming out in November, and I cannot wait for that. Number 2 is a recent find of mine, and it's one of his more recent works. And when I say recent, I say within the last 10 years or so. He's been writing for so long. And that is 11/22/63. I might not hold this up the whole time I'm talking about it because it's humongous. This thing is a brick. I swear it is. But this is a story of a man named Jake, who is an English teacher, and he has this student who is a little bit slow. This is the GED class, and one day he writes an assignment that is to talk about the hardest thing that you ever overcome, or something like that. And this man tells about how his father killed his entire family and tried to kill him in, I want to say it was 1958. I could be wrong. But Jake feels for this man and wishes that he could do something to help him. And he has a friend around the same time that has discovered that he has basically a time portal in this restaurant that he owns. And he tells Jake about it because he is dying of cancer and he doesn't think he's going to make it. And he wants to use this portal to stop the assassination of JFK. And it takes you out to the exact same day in 1958, I believe it is, every single time. And spend the 5 years building information and everything about the assassination and an attempt to stop it. And Jake decides to go ahead and do this because he thinks he can kill two birds with one stone. He wants to save this man's family and stop the JFK assassination. But he learns a lot of things along the way about himself, about history that he never understood before, and that you really shouldn't mess with time because it can have disastrous results. Yes, you may stop something horrible from happening, but in turn, something even worse may happen in the future. And that was something that he was not prepared for. This is a very, very engaging story. I read it in one sitting. Despite its huge size, I read this in one sitting. I could not put it down. It was unlike anything Stephen King has ever written before. And it's very close to being my favorite book of his. It's so, so good. This is a 5-star read. If I could give this 10 stars, I would do it. I'm not even joking about that. 11/22/63. Pick it up. You'll love it. And in my number one spot, this is something that I read initially years and years and years ago, and it is still my favorite. It holds a very strong place in my heart, and that's The Shining. I don't know what I can even say about The Shining to explain what an incredible book this is. I'm sure that most of you know by now what this story is, but for those of you that don't, this is the story of a family of 3, Jack, Wendy, and Danny. And Jack gets a job as a caretaker for this Colorado hotel called the Overlook for the winter. And he is a struggling alcoholic. He's been trying to get back on the bandwagon for a while, but because of an incident at his previous job, he's having difficulty finding work. And he takes this job, despite it being so secluded, as trying to get some honor back to his name, get away from the drink, prove that he's a changed man, both to the faculty of the job where he works, see if he can get that position back, as well as his wife and son. But what they don't know about this hotel is that it is extremely haunted by good and bad spirits, and they prey on his weakness. They prey on his weakness. It fuels them, it makes them stronger, and they want to take his young son, 5-year-old Danny, who has psychic abilities, because his power can make them stronger, but it can also stop them. So they want to basically kill him and absorb his power. So they want to exploit the father and try to make him kill his family so that the hotel can basically come alive and spirits can live on forever. It's so engaging. I still get spooked when I read this, and I read it at least once a year. I can't deny that. I do. But I always find something new. Every single time that I read this, I find something new that I missed before that makes me love it even more. It's absolutely incredible. The majority of it is just the three of them in this hotel, fighting for survival, fighting for their family, and hoping that they can get through this alive. It's absolutely incredible. 5 stars. And there will never be another Shining. There have been books that have tried to take a similar concept, but they never touch this. And they never will. Oh my gosh. One of the best books of all time, I swear. I absolutely love it. And if you, I know you probably cannot tell on camera here, but see red rum on the door? So red rum is actually on the cover of both this and Dr. Sleep. Really ties them together. Red rum. It's a big thing. Okay, guys, well, that is all that I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And if you would like to see a review for any of these books, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. And I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.